Hi, folks. I'm Father Joe Grimaldi. You can call me Joe, and I'd like to welcome you to my podcast. But now, here's our host and friend, Ken Calvert.
Hello, and hey, there they are. Hi, everybody. It's Ken Calvert along with Father Joe Grimaldi, and welcome to the Father Joe podcast. Well, we're located here in southeast Lower Michigan, and people are listening virtually all over the world, but we have every reason to be in a really bad mood. Most of the Midwest and the East Coast, sans Florida, Georgia, the Carolinas, but they're getting their due as well. We just had a long winter. It's really been a difficult...
The worst I've seen in years, many years.
Is a priest allowed to complain?
Of course. What would life be without complaints?
We were talking last week about various things that people just assume. Priests don't shower, they don't shop.
Pretty bad world.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny how people just don't think. They just put you in this box.
Yeah.
He's our parish priest. He doesn't come out until we need a parish priest.
That's right.
No, he may want to have a really nice meal and maybe...
Sometime incorrectly they put us on a pedestal, and they forget that we're just as human as any other person.
Thank you. I didn't, you know what? I was one of those people that do put you on a pedestal.
Well, all right.
My dog.
I know what you have in mind.
My wife, every single time, and we've done 30-some podcasts now, she'll say every evening to me, "Did you ask Father Joe my question?" And I said, no, I didn't ask. I forgot. And she goes, "I don't think you're forgetting. I think you're just not asking." And I said, "Okay, I'll ask him next time." Well, this time, I'm sorry, my feet are to the fire. So here's my question for you. Do dogs go to heaven?
It's an interesting question. Because
I see Tug.
I love dogs.
Yeah.
But go ahead. Do you have a special dog in mind?
Well, Tug, Popeye, Benson. They're especially Tug and Popeye.
How often do you see St. Francis without animals around him?
Oh, never. Well, I don't know.
And other saints as well.
Yeah.
I would say this. I don't know, to be honest with you. I mean, if I had a definitive answer, I would give it to you. But I can't imagine. We don't know exactly what heaven is all about.
Right. We've been over there before.
We don't know if it's a place,
State of mind.
A state of mind. What we do know is that we will be perfectly happy. Now, will we be perfectly happy with a dog? Then God is going to provide a dog, okay? But I think it's important to know that whatever heaven is full happiness for the individual. Since we're all different, we may not always have the same idea of heaven, but we will have the full measure of happiness wherever we are. I would say this. If I can't say no to it, why not say yes? I mean...
If I'm not mistaken, at St. Hugo, there was a priest over there that had a golden retriever, if I remember correctly.
Oh, he still does. And I think I would love to have a dog. I really would.
Sure.
My hesitation, of course, is scheduling.
Sure.
And I just don't want to leave the dog at home
I'll take care
without
of him.
any help, this type of thing. So it's difficult to have a dog and not take care of it properly. I just want to get back. Anne is such a wonderful woman. She deserves an answer. And unfortunately, I can't give her a definitive one. But I can say this: whatever is going to make her happiness is going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I can't say no. I can't say yes to the question. Dogs have a special affinity to the individuals.
Huge, they're so important in our lives. And we lost Tug. It'll be 2 years in August. I'll still drop a plate and think, oh, sorry, Tug. The reaction is still there. Pulling up in front of the house. Just used to see the curtains kind of move. He would know the sound of the car and all that. And I miss that. I really, really do miss that. And my wife works with dogs and cats. She works in animal cancer. So, it's like she comes home each and every night talking about Harley and Biscuit and Dingy and, Ralphie. And I'm like, please just tell me the good ones. Just tell me the good stories, So she's just, the St. Francine, I guess, when it comes to animals, because she's just surrounded by them constantly and adores them. So
I certainly made a point of blessing dogs around the Feast of St. Francis. Actually, when I was in California, people would bring horses. They would bring different kinds of special
Sure.
birds.
Yeah.
They would bring the cow that they had, even a pig one day.
That's cool.
And so we would have the blessing right around the beginning of the Feast of St. Francis is October 4th. And so right around that, maybe it couldn't be on the 4th. We did it on the Saturday morning, and they would come with all of these different animals, and we would bless them. They're important to our livelihood. Why not bless them? If we bless houses, why not bless dogs?
Yeah, I was thinking about that because they have the biker blessings now.
Yes.
There's a big one. I think it's in Royal Oak.
The Holy Father does it.
Is that right?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
You're talking about the motorcycle guys, right?
Yes,
Along the
exactly.
There are all sorts of cool blessings like that. I used to be in chili cook-offs. We used to have a priest, as a matter of fact, who would just wish us all well.
Yeah.
But I would I would prefer to have you in my booth. What could the judges say and I would make you wear your collar on that one.
Well, wear the collar with an apron, sure.
All right, coming at you fast and furious. Okay, so dogs do go to heaven, and that's good to know.
I didn't say that, but that's okay.
I'm going to go ahead and put words in your mouth.
That's good.
We lost a great one in Barbara Bush.
What a role model for the whole world.
Wasn't she
Men
wonderful?
and women.
Wasn't
Men
she wonderful?
and women.
Well, I mean, I always thought she was incredible. I believe somewhere in my lost archives I have an albeit small interview with Barbara Bush from my days at WJR. But just a delightful, wonderful human being.
And what you see is what you get.
Uh-huh.
That's what's beautiful about her, because she's real. There's nothing put on about her. She could care less about the pomp and circumstances that went along with being the First Lady. She was a real individual who certainly was loyal to family, loyal to country. I mean, what an example, what a role model for the whole world.
I'm wondering how he's doing, and he's obviously in everybody's thoughts and prayers right now.
I'm sure it's got to be very difficult for him, because they were married over 70 years. So, I mean, that has an effect.
Yeah.
I mean,
72 or 70, I think 73
maybe.
years, yeah.
And they were together in everything they did,
Yeah.
obviously. So I think it has to affect him tremendously.
She was saying that she went on one date only, and it was in high school, and it was with George Bush. And she married him, and that's the only man she's ever known. Yeah. And like I said, she will be missed. And
well, I think the world needs role models like her.
Somebody put forth the proposition today, is that the end of political decency or the beginning of? And I thought, it's a very good question.
It is a very good question.
It's a very good question. Another couple of quick questions for you. I was thinking about this when you were talking about in the annulment podcasts that we did. I think it was in the second one, part 2, that you were saying that if you're divorced and not remarried, you can receive the Eucharist.
Of course.
If you're divorced and remarried, you can't receive the Eucharist. You, however, suggested that theologians are thinking maybe those people deserve communion the most.
Exactly. They're hurting.
If they're married, divorced, married, remarried, why are they hurting?
Because they're missing being active in the church that they also love. See, I think that there's a dilemma that they have to face. When a person is a Catholic and all of a sudden forbidden to receive communion, that person is going through a lot of difficulties, emotional as well as, emotional difficulties.
But they're happy on both sides. I hate to put it this way, but they got it right the second time. They're still in love with the church. So the only pushback they're getting is a rule that says they can't receive communion. And that seems unfortunate. It
is unfortunate, and it's very important to many people to receive communion. I'll tell you why. There's it's interesting. I was talking to people that like to bounce around. They go to the four-square churches where it's basically scripture, singing hymns and listening to concerts and so on. And then they're Catholics. They were baptized Catholics, so they come back to the Catholic Church, but then they go back to the other and so on. I said to one person, why? If you are very happy there, stay there. They said, no, we miss communion. these people do go to confession at times, and they will ask, I need to have absolution just so I can receive communion. But they're going back and forth because they miss the Eucharist.
I was thinking about this. You know for a fact there are people, and I think you may have called them actors or something like that. You know that there are people out there that don't go to Mass every single Sunday, but you'll see them at a funeral or a wedding, and you know that they're not active in the church, but they take communion. And your thoughts on that are?
They're adults. Okay. I'm not going to stop them. I mean, I may know about what they're doing. I don't know exactly that they're doing that. And even if I did, I think they have an obligation to abide with what they believe. And if they believe that they can receive the Eucharist, I would say let them do it. Huh? They're adults. It's almost like sometimes people say to me, Father, I know that we're supposed to go to Mass on the weekend. Would it be okay if I went on Friday instead of Saturday or Sunday? I says, wait a minute. You have to make that decision, not me. You're an adult. You know what to do. You do what you do.
Mm-hmm. You know what happens a lot.
Of course I do.
Okay.
Yes. I think nowadays what happens in the church today, I see dwindling of numbers, but also I see a rise in spiritualism. Call it spiritualism, okay? People that believe in a higher life, but not necessarily a church that is programmed a certain way or another way, and so on and so forth. They don't want to be tied down to rules. Mm-hmm. They just want to be able to be free to do what they want,
right,
and not have to be obliged by any particular rules that the Catholic Church has, or the Protestant Church, whatever the case might be. So I would say this, they're spiritualists. Those numbers are growing much more than we want to believe. I think it's we see the dwindling in the Catholic Church and all of the mainstream churches, not just the Catholic Church. There's a dwindling in numbers. That's because, in my mind anyway, there is a rise in spiritualism.
I like that. Okay.
No formal religion.
How do you feel about no formal religion?
Well, I feel that sometimes it's a cop-out. I don't like the idea that the church says there are certain moral standards. Let me decide what those moral standards are. Mm-hmm. Well, if you think that way, there are no moral standards. If I could make my own, you could make your own, and so on. I think the church is trying to guide us in the right way. That's what it's doing. Even as an institution. A lot of people don't like the idea of an institution where you have to register, where you have to... But the church is doing that so they can, look after you and take care of you as much as they can.
I'll tell you one thing for sure. There's a joke out there that if a plane is crashing, you'll be hard-pressed to find anybody agnostic on that airplane. It's kind of true, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, you hang on to your rosary or whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
Whether or not you believe in it, you'd certainly hold on to it.
So to put a bow on that, you're going to leave it up to the person, if he wants to or if she wants to, if she's comfortable in her own skin, based on, I guess, what would be part of the rules and regs of the Catholic Church, taking communion.
Well, why are they asking the question?
What do you mean?
Why are they saying, is it okay if I receive communion?
Because they've been told so many times with the rules and regs.
No, because they know what the rule is. It's not a sincere question.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
I do.
Basically, they're looking for someone to support their view. This happens a lot, for example, at weddings. I think it's silly, and I laugh at it because the wedding might be at 2 p.m. So now there's a party afterwards, of course, and Sunday they don't want to be bothered going to church. So, Father, do you think that could count for Sunday Mass?
Sure.
We're acting like little children here. I said, you're an adult. Why don't you make that decision? Why are you depending on me?
Okay, I like that. Okay, so it's up to us to make that decision.
It is.
All right.
You certainly want to abide by what you believe. One of the big impediments is a prior bond, and you just brought that up when you brought that other question up. Prior bond. Suppose you marry this woman and you find out that she was married before, but their marriage was never annulled. That is a bond. She is married. You can't marry someone who has a bond, who's already married. But I just wanted to bring it up because you just brought up the idea of a person who is divorced and remarried, and they're in church, and they would love to receive communion, but the church says, at this time anyway, no. Now, the Holy Father, I know, seems to be interested in discussing this further. Theologians are discussing it further because you have a lot of people in the pews that could probably use the strength that comes along with communion, but they don't have that opportunity.
Final question for you, and this is from left field, but I've been thinking about it a lot. We used to have the giggles in church as parishioners. We had the giggles. Do silly things ever happen at the altar?
I'll tell you a funny story. As Christian brothers, we used to have night prayer. And after night prayer, which ended at about 9 o'clock, there was what we call the grand silence. Now, you have a group of men who are gathered in the kitchen because they all want to go get their cookie and milk before going to bed, but not allowed to talk. You tell me if there isn't one or two giggles going around because they're eating their cookie and drinking their milk, looking at each other because it's the grand silence. The grand silence was considered very, very seriously, and so that it meant that, there was even silly questions. For example, can I answer the door if somebody is knocking on the door? Well, of course you can.
It's a stupid question.
Yeah, they're stupid. But by the same token, you had some people that took all of that stuff as black and white, never saw the gray area, which we have to all look at all times. But anyway, to answer your question, yes, I'm sure it does happen. I don't know whether it be because somebody may have forget to do the right ritual on something, and immediately the others might be smiling about it. But yes, of course, we're human beings.
Well, let's have a little fun in church on occasion, eh? Let's have a little fun. All right, well, I think we had a little fun here. It's the Father Joe podcast. I'm Ken Calvert. It's always a treat to get together and do these with you, and I look forward to the next time when we get together once again for the Father Joe podcast.
I'm Father Joe Grimaldi, and I'm very happy to be with you today. This is Father Joe Grimaldi, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Father Joe podcast.
If you have a question or a comment for the Father Joe podcast, send it to fatherjoepodcast@gmail.com. That's fatherjoepodcast@gmail.com. Follow Father Joe on Twitter @FatherJoePodcast. The Twitter address again is @FatherJoePodcast. Please subscribe to the Father Joe podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, and soon on iHeartRadio. We also ask that you rate the podcast and feel free to leave a comment. And finally, if you have a friend that you think might enjoy the podcast, please pass it along. Thanks again for listening, everybody, and see you next time.